Hi guys, and welcome back to SitRep Gaming. In today's video I want to talk about something which Call of Duty has flirted with in the past, but which has never been significantly or consistently integrated into the games, and that is dynamic multiplayer maps. Some titles have them and some titles don't, so I want to explore why dynamic maps have never truly caught on in Call of Duty, and explore whether we might see them in future titles in the franchise, including in Call of Duty World War II. To get a feel for dynamic maps, I sat down to play Call of Duty Ghosts, the game which has probably took dynamic maps the furthest we've seen them in Call of Duty. So the gameplay that you're going to be seeing is on the map Bayview, and I decided to break out my tried and trusted Vector CRB to great effect, did some more great work and topped the leaderboard. But enough about the gameplay. I want to know what you guys think about dynamic maps, so as we get into this discussion, be sure to leave a comment down below and leave a like rating on the video. But without further ado, let's get into the gameplay and let's talk about dynamic maps. Right guys, dynamic maps. So as I've said, Call of Duty Ghosts probably had the most dynamic map elements which we've seen in a Call of Duty game. Now some of the maps had passive dynamic elements and some of the maps had player controlled dynamic elements. A passive dynamic map element is one which will occur regardless of what players do during a game. So take the map which I'm playing on right now, Bayview. As many of you will remember, this map has got the little tram in it which will travel around the map throughout the game, and you can either hop on it, you can use it as cover, or you can completely ignore it, but whatever you do, that element will keep on going throughout the entire map. Player controlled dynamic elements, on the other hand, are things which need to be activated by the player. So for instance, on the map Strike Zone, if you complete the field orders and get the care package, there's a chance that you might get the chem strike. And if you do, when you activate it, the map will be completely transformed into a wasteland as the nuke drops, all whilst you're playing. There were also much smaller player controlled elements in Call of Duty Ghosts, like on the map Octane where you could shoot down the roof of the gas station, or on the map Chasm where you could shoot out the cables holding the elevator, so any player who was either on top of the elevator or inside it would plummet to their death. So of course the question is, what did the Call of Duty community think about the dynamic map elements which we'd seen in Call of Duty Ghosts? Now while some people thought they were a really cool idea, others found them really irritating. Like on the map Tremor, where you had the earthquake ripples which would periodically ripple throughout the entire map, if you were in a gunfight when one of those ripples hit, it would throw your aim completely off, and there was a strong likelihood that you were going to lose that gunfight because of it. Simply put, players don't like dying to things which they feel they don't have any control over. The same could be said about the chem strike on Strike Zone. Yes, it was really cool that the map was transformed after the nuke dropped, but when that nuke dropped, the entire team had to die just because someone got a chem strike out of a care package. It was kind of understandable then that with Advanced Warfare, Sledgehammer Games completely rolled back dynamic map elements. But that said, they were still present on some maps, such as on Recovery, where the hangar doors would open up halfway through the game and you could move into a new area, or on the map Defender, where you would have the waves constantly rolling in and out on one part of the map, affecting whether or not you could play in it. However, Advanced Warfare completely abandoned the idea of player-controlled dynamic map elements, possibly with the exception of the explosive canisters which you could shoot on Biolab. And as we've moved forward onto Black Ops 3 and then Infinite Warfare, it feels like developers have pretty much given up the ghost with dynamic map elements, which is kind of understandable given the poor reaction that players had to them from Call of Duty Ghosts. Now I personally feel like there is scope for getting dynamic map elements back in Call of Duty, but it's simply a question of getting to the point where players don't feel irritated by them, but feel like they can engage with them. Take the earthquake ripples which I described from the map Tremor in Call of Duty Ghosts. Things like that are a big no-no because they interfere with a player when they might be in the middle of a gunfight. However, something like the hangar doors which open up on the map Recovery on Call of Duty Advanced Warfare is much better because it doesn't really interfere with a player whilst they're actually playing the game, it just helps keep the map flowing and does something interesting for players to experience. Of course, when we talk about dynamic map elements, you kind of have to talk about Battlefield 1, because Battlefield 1's destructible terrain and constantly changing weather are pretty much the most dynamic elements that we see in any first-person shooter right now. First of all, I don't think that destructible maps would really work in Call of Duty, for the simple reason that maps in the game are designed to try and encourage map flow and funnel gunfights. So if you could suddenly just blow up a wall right in the middle of one of the maps, it would completely disrupt the map flow, and to be honest, it just wouldn't really work. However, changing weather is something which I think can definitely have a place in Call of Duty, and to be honest, I'm not sure why we haven't really seen it in the past. Now, some people speculate that the Call of Duty engines which are used by the 3 Call of Duty developers currently simply can't handle dynamic weather in the same way that, for instance, Battlefield 1's Frostbite engine can. Sure, we see some rain on maps like Noir in Call of Duty Infinite Warfare or on Stormfront in Call of Duty Ghosts, but nothing as dynamic as true changing weather patterns. Some of you might not be aware, but the game engines currently used by Treyarch, Infinity Ward and Sledgehammer games are all based off a heavily modified version of the Quake 3 engine. Now, Quake 3 was a really successful game back from 1999, but many people are of the opinion that Call of Duty is ready to have a new engine built from scratch, and that new engine would allow for truly dynamic map elements such as weather to be integrated into the game. Of course, if Call of Duty does see a new engine built, it's more than likely that the responsibility for it is going to be given to Treyarch, purely because the credibility of Infinity Ward is at an all-time low given the perceived failure of games such as Call of Duty Ghosts and Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, and Sledgehammer Games have only produced one game, Call of Duty Advanced Warfare. However, Treyarch's Black Ops series comprises 3 of the most successful titles of the entire Call of Duty franchise, and given this, Treyarch's credibility is undoubtedly the highest of all 3 development studios. Despite all that though, and whilst it doesn't look like it's going to have dynamic weather patterns, Call of Duty World War II is introducing the War game mode, which looks to be the most dynamic game mode which we've had in any Call of Duty. Players will be able to construct bridges and gun turrets, as well as escorting a constantly moving tank which they can utilise and fire a turret from. So it's going to be interesting to see how Call of Duty fans react to this, given that Call of Duty players are most commonly known for wanting one thing and one thing only, and that's to have gunfight after gunfight and nothing else. So what do you guys think? Do you think that dynamic maps have got a place in Call of Duty, or do you think they're better suited to games like Battlefield 1, which are much more complex and trying to be more realistic, whereas Call of Duty, let's face it, is still an arcade shooter? So that's going to wrap it up for today's video. I hope that you've enjoyed watching it, and if you have, please leave a like rating, it's greatly appreciated. If you want to see more content from SitRep Gaming, then be sure to subscribe to the channel and make sure to turn on the notifications so that you never miss another video. All that's left to say is thanks for tuning into SitRep Gaming, and I'll see you in the next video.